Hey everyone, hope you're well. So in today's video, we're going to be aiming to answer a few questions that keep getting fired our way. And that is, what MacBooks are safe to buy at the moment and what ones should you hold out for a little while before jumping in and making your buying decision? So before we answer that question, I'm going to start off by saying the most important thing you need to consider is how much do you need that new hardware, because ultimately what you should be buying is what is right for you right now. If you're required to do a job, if you need it for creativity purposes, if you're a content creator, if you run a business, if you're a student and you need that hardware right now, you buy what's right for you now, regardless of what's on the horizon. But obviously the smart decision is always to try and buy it at the best time of year and in the best time for Apple's release cycle. So I'm going to kick off with the first ones which I don't recommend buying at the moment, and that is the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro 13-inch. And the reasons why are because Apple Silicon is literally just around the corner. So dates being thrown around at the moment are November 17th for an Apple Silicon event, which isn't far off at all. Apple have told us that we will be getting an Apple Silicon based Mac or MacBook this year. So that is definitely going to be landing unless something catastrophically goes wrong. And like I mentioned earlier, the rumours are pointing towards a November 17th event. So the first bit of Apple Silicon hardware that's been rumoured to be coming out and has been leaked to death is the Apple MacBook 12-inch model, which has been discontinued before. And the reason it was discontinued is the Intel chips that it was using inside of it were just so restrained by the thermal limitations that they just gave a really poor customer experience. So Apple Silicon, in a nutshell, for those of you who are unfamiliar, it's using Apple's own chips, so the stuff that runs their iPhones, the stuff that runs their iPads, and sticking it into a MacBook. And the advantage of this is it uses far less power and produces far less heat, which is a massive win for any of those thin and light form factors, like the 12-inch MacBook. By moving away from Intel, Apple is gaining some massive advantages in the fact that they control all the hardware that's going into their MacBooks. It means that they'll be able to design it around that hardware. Everything's going to run very similar to things like the iPads, and they've already shown off how powerful those iPads are running on Apple Silicon. So it'll be very interesting to see how they can redefine that thin and light factor. So that 12-inch coming back to the market is very exciting. So if you're somebody who's looking for a thin and light, ultra-portable device like the MacBook Air, for example, that 12-inch one should be very, very appealing. It will most likely be more powerful than the current MacBook Air is and come in at a lower price as well. The question is whether or not you're going to get away with that smaller screen real estate, but there's not a massive amount in it. The other thing to consider as well is that there is a possibility that the MacBook Air will also get Apple Silicon at the same time, and we'll see two types of ultra-portable devices. I think it's more likely that we will see just the 12-inch one and the MacBook Air will get a refresh next year, so it's probably a safe bet to go for at the moment, but again, we've only got a couple of weeks to wait. And if you're in the thin and light market, then that 12-inch one is going to be very, very appealing. The other one, obviously, that has been rumoured to launch alongside this is the 13-inch MacBook Pro, which again is meant to come down in price because of Apple Silicon being in there and gain some of the performance benefits. So it puts the MacBook Air in a very odd and awkward position. It's going to be one of those situations where if you buy it now, you're probably going to regret it because there'll be new hardware on the market. So in my opinion, at the moment, if you're looking for the MacBook Air or the lower end MacBook Pro 13-inch, you probably want to hang fire just that little bit. There's not too long to wait, so even if you need it in the immediate future, it's not far off to wait. So just hang fire, don't put the money down because prices will probably change on the current devices that are on the market, but also new and more exciting devices are just on the horizon. So MacBook Air and MacBook Pro 13-inch, nope, don't buy. So the next one I am going to talk about is the MacBook Pro 16-inch model. Now this has already been refreshed this year with newer processors, so I can't see much happening with it. And to be honest, there hasn't really been anything leaked about it. So there's been no leaks coming out about a new redesigned MacBook Pro 16-inch this year. All the rumours seem to point that this thing will get a refresh next year along with a 14-inch MacBook Pro. So that's quite exciting. Fingers crossed we'll see a redesign in some of the features there, and they'll both most likely ship with Apple Silicon. So if you're in the market for a powerhouse device, something like the MacBook Pro 16-inch, at the moment that is a pretty safe bet to go for. The only reason why you might hold off buying this at the moment is because you just want to see what Apple Silicon is capable of when it comes in the new 12-inch or the MacBook Pro 13-inch. So that's maybe a reason to wait. But if you need the graphics performance on this thing and you need the processor performance and that Intel package, then this at the moment is a safe bet to go for. So MacBook Pro 16-inch, in my opinion, it's pretty safe to go for at the moment. So moving away from the MacBooks and onto the Macs. Now, the first one to talk about is the Mac Mini. So again, that's one of those devices that has had an upgrade this year, and it got the newer processors in there, and it got a bump up in performance. So it's an all around a really good package. But at the moment, the developer kit that Apple is shipping out for developers to test Apple Silicon, it's running on a Mac Mini. And ultimately, that makes me wonder, are we going to see this thing ship and be announced at the November event? And if so, it's probably worthwhile, yet again, just hanging fire just that little bit. There haven't been particularly many rumours for this one, but obviously when they announced it in the developer kit and they showed that off, they've already got that hardware there, and they just need to upgrade that processor to whatever they're going to be shipping in the new MacBooks. So that's going to be really interesting. So if you're in the market for a Mac Mini, or if you're looking to upgrade your old one, I would suggest just hanging fire that little bit. There haven't been a massive amount of leaks or rumours for this one, but it is one of those devices that just makes sense for them to bring it out to the market with Apple Silicon. So just hang fire a few weeks, see what comes on the market, and if it doesn't and you do need that, then you can pick up an old Intel version. Moving on to the iMacs, and both of those devices, in my opinion, are safe at the moment. All the signs, all the rumours and everything else regarding Apple Silicon and redesigned iMacs all point to next year, so we still have some time yet. The iMacs have literally just had that upgrade to 10th gen Intel processors. They're some of the best on the market at the moment in terms of that all-in-one device, so you can't go too far wrong with them. They're a great bang for buck, they're doing a really good job, and there doesn't seem to be any chance of them getting a refresh this year. So I would imagine that we will see Apple Silicon iMacs next year with a complete redesign, getting rid of those massive chonky bezels, but at the moment, a safe bet to go for if you're in the market for something like an iMac. And last but not least is the Mac Pro, and I think we can all agree at this stage that isn't going to be getting any changes anytime soon. It's their massively flagship business and enterprise focused device, and the chances of that getting Apple Silicon at this early stage is very unlikely. Apple have got a relatively long transition period to get all the hardware across, so I think that's going to be more towards the end of the 2-year cycle. If you're that kind of crazy person who's got the money and going for a Mac Pro, power to you. Get one now. I doubt you're going to regret it, apart from maybe the hit to your bank account. So it kind of gives you an overview of the devices and my opinion based on some of the rumours, the leaks and the news that I've been following as to whether or not they're safe to go for or if you should maybe hang fire that little bit. But the other thing is going back to what I said at the beginning, buying the hardware that works for you right now and as and when you need it, because Apple Silicon is potentially not going to be the right thing for a lot of users out there. For the casual user, for somebody who's just doing a bit of browsing and a little bit of word processing on the go, then Apple Silicon is going to be more than capable. The hardware is meant to be amazingly powerful and very power efficient, but there's going to be a transition stage. So these devices that come onto the market end of November, beginning of December, whenever it's going to be that these happen and they start to land, they're going to be the ones that have the teething problems, that are going to have app compatibility issues. So it's one of those things, if you have an app set that you use and you use it for business and you use it for enterprise, if you're using it for studying or anything like that, there is a chance that those applications will not work with Apple Silicon. Or if they do, they're potentially not going to be optimized, they'll run sluggishly, and they just won't be reliable. Now there's a chance, of course, that Apple absolutely nail this and there won't be any compatibility issues at all. And fingers crossed that's the case, but it is worth bearing in mind that Apple Silicon is going to be a brand new in terms of the Mac. Now we have had developers working on this in advance, but there's still going to be teething issues and it's just worthwhile considering. Those early adopters are going to be the ones that have all the pain, so potentially it's worthwhile just hanging fire, seeing all the early reviews, seeing what people's opinions are, and finding out if your application, your workflow is going to work on Apple Silicon or how well it's going to work on Apple Silicon. And the other thing to consider is that Apple have a pretty damn solid lineup at the moment. This is probably the first year where pretty much all of their devices across the Mac and MacBook lineup have actually been really appealing and decent customer propositions. Just going back a year ago, we had butterfly keyboards in the MacBooks and they were abysmal and they had reliability issues. But now all of the MacBooks have moved across onto the scissor keyboard that got reintroduced with the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and it is a dream to type on. They all look and feel good, they're all pretty reliable, they all offer a great feature set and at a decent price across the board as well. That price point has come down quite a bit unless of course you go for the really high-end stuff. So the Apple lineup at the moment in terms of its Mac and MacBook is really appealing regardless of what happens with Apple Silicon. So if you are in an immediate buying decision, you can't go too far wrong, and the great thing is the resale value on these tends to hold up. So you know what, it's a great time to be shopping for a Mac. However, if you don't have an immediate need to go out and buy one of these and you don't need it for business right now, or if your workflow is not going to be destroyed by potential compatibility issues, we don't have long to wait. I can't wait to see what Apple introduce at the November 17th event, if that's when it lands. It's a really exciting time to see what's going to be coming on these Apple Silicon devices because they are meant to be powerful, power efficient, and if they can deliver on some of the promises they've thrown about, wow. We are in for a treat. So Hope this video's helped. If you've got any questions at all, throw them down in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. If you want to see us do any videos on things like Apple Silicon or up and coming Apple devices, or coverage of the launches and the devices as they do get announced, then be sure to let us know. In the meantime, hit that subscribe button, because the more subscribers we get, it really helps the channel. And you guys are the ones that help us to grow. So thank you very much for all your support so far. We'll see you soon, stay safe, and goodbye.